Okay, we are finally up to the most important phrase or term, I should say, in every bracha, which is Hashem. Now, obviously, we could devote the rest of our lives to the topic of Hashem, but because there's so much to talk about, I'm going to try to reduce it all to one 5-minute session. Okay, I used to teach a class in high school for 9th graders called Tefilah 101, and we would start off with the motto of tefilah, Da lifnei Atoh, and the first lesson would be the question, who is Hashem? Okay, so students would immediately start giving answers like, he's the creator of the universe, he took us out of Mitzrayim, he gave us the Torah, he's our father, he's our king, and I would clarify the question and say, no, not what did he do, or what is his resume, what are his accomplishments, or what is he called, who is Hashem himself? So, the answer I would give, the shortest answer I can give that's meaningful is, Hashem is the one independent existence, and then if you wanted to add in parentheses, who is non-physical and outside of time. Those who are familiar with the Rambam's 13 Ikarim, the 13 fundamental principles of Torah, will recognize that these are principles 2, 1, 3, and 4. God's oneness, God's independent the nature of his existence, his non-physicality, and his eternality. What I'm about to show you in the next slide is my summary of the Rambam's Hillchos Yisodi Torah Perek Aleph, in my own words, again, for the sake of brevity here. So let's unpack the definition. When we say Hashem is one, we do not merely mean that we worship one God and not many gods. We're not just saying monotheism in contradistinction to polytheism. What we mean is that he is absolutely one in every sense of the word. There is no other. He has no parts, pieces, qualities, divisions, attributes, characteristics, or anything else. He is absolutely unique, and he has nothing in common with anything else. So when I teach this in high school, I use the following example. How many water bottles am I holding up? 1. But is it truly one? No, it's not, because there's another one that is like it. So it's not truly unique. And furthermore, it is divisible into parts. It is not one. It is subject to division. So Hashem is not subject to division or plurality or multiplicity in any way. He doesn't have qualities. There are no parts of him. Again, this common notion that there's a piece of God in all of us goes against the notion of God's oneness. So he is absolutely one. Okay, next, independent existence. So we talked about this in an earlier video in the series. His existence is not dependent on anything else. We depend on him. He doesn't depend on anything. His existence is self-sufficient. His nature is to exist. He cannot not exist. I also illustrate this in class with a water bottle. So I say, there's water in here, right? So is the water wet? Yes, the water is wet. Okay, now this is a tissue. Is the tissue wet? Yes, the tissue is wet. What's the difference between the wetness of the water and the wetness of the tissue? So the difference is that the water is wet by its very nature. Water cannot not be wet. The tissue is wet accidentally, so to speak, meaning that it's a characteristic that it's imbued with, endowed with. Same thing for us. Hashem, his nature is to exist. He cannot not exist. Whereas we and everything else in the universe, we could not exist, or we could exist. At one point we didn't exist. At one point we will not exist, or at least our bodies, or our souls might not exist. So our existence is dependent. Hashem is an independent existence. 3, non-physical. He has no body. He has no physical characteristics, including emotions. He's not subject to any of the occurrences which occur to physical bodies. Nothing that you say that could happen to a physical body could actually happen to Hashem. I'm just realizing here that this L is not colored yellow, so that's going to be annoying to people. So he's not subject to anything that could happen to physicality. And lastly, lastly, he is eternal, meaning he's outside of time. He didn't come into existence, but he is, he was, he always will be, so to speak. Again, even those terms are temporal terms. He cannot change. He cannot change for several reasons. I mean, he can't change because change would mean that he exists in time. Change would mean that he is not one, because when you change something, there is the thing and then the quality that's being changed, and so God cannot be divided into such things. He can't change because the change couldn't stem from without or from within. Change is a physical characteristic. So really, all these things are really interdependent. These are, each one can be inferred from the other. It's just that in our minds, these are 4 distinct categories. And that's why I believe the Rambam divides them into 4 separate fundamentals, because our minds need to process each one on its own. So when we talk about Hashem and we use the name Yud-Ke Vav-Ke, the tetragrammaton, is that how you say it? Yeah. Then what we have in mind is this definition, is we're talking about Hashem himself. We're not describing him in relation to anything else. And we mean he is the one independent existence who is non-physical and eternal. And even though we cannot grasp exactly what that means, we can only understand it by negation, then these terms are the best we could do. If we couldn't even use these terms, then we wouldn't have any sort of conception of Hashem at all. So at least we have these negatives. So as long as you keep in mind when you say Hashem is one, that He is not one like anything else. He exists, but His existence is not like anything else. He's not physical, but all we know are physical things, and He's eternal, and all we know are temporal things. Hashem really transcends understanding, but this is the closest we can get to a definition.